Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chimene. Today I'm going to present on the subject known as Global Trends 2018. This is an interesting subject under which I'm going to take you through the various aspects of the trends that we are projecting that by 2030 we would have gone through, and the issues of the Asian power countries that are coming out as dominant powers that are showing for that by the year 2030 they would have taken the Americans and the European region. So I'm going to take you through the aspects of what are known as global trends. As you shall see, according to our presentation, that by 2013, no country will be possessing what is known as the hegemonic power, that is the power to override politically, socially, and economically in terms of the abilities and the resources that they have. And then research has also proved that beyond measure, that China in itself is growing at an astronomical rate, at a rate 100 times than that which Britain and the Americans grew. And that shows that by the year 2030, China, India, and Russia would have overtaken the American region to the point that the resources that took America 100 years to achieve, these countries would have achieved in a short space of time. And that means that in terms of determining the economic setup, the issues of the economy, these countries will be powerhouses. And these are issues which, in terms of planning, planners and economic analysts, and we ourselves as leaders, in terms of making decisions, knowing which partners to partner with, we need to be cognizant of these changes, as they shall determine, and to a greater extent, they shall pave way to the focus of the skills that shall be lacking and that shall be needed at that particular time. This we do because we find that there are certain skills that are existing currently which sometimes might be irrelevant. As for example, projections are for every job that is currently being done, one in 3 jobs shall be replaced by something which is technologically advanced. That means that for every 3 people, 1 is going to lose a job, and that job is going to be replaced by a machine. So we need to teach and give our children guidance on which areas to focus mainly on. We shall also notice that there are certain projections that come in handy that I believe I need also to indicate and highlight to you. These projections, I'm talking about the GDP. GDP is the gross domestic product. This we are saying the average income per citizen of a nation. And average per income per citizen of a nation determines the wealth distribution that exists in a country. This we are looking at a projection whereby we are seeing, according to the graphs, that China, British, and Russia, they are projected to have a higher GDP against the Americans, which seem to be growing constant and are actually on the downline side, meaning that they would have reached their saturation level, and that these developing, the BRICS countries, will now be shown before that they have the ability and the strength and the resources and the manpower to leverage over the weakness of the American and the European countries. That means that in terms of our partnership, we need to take advantage of who are we supposed to look into, which market are we supposed to shift our attention to, meaning that as these guys in these BRICS countries develop that more disposable income, they are better able to give, they are better able to buy, they are better able to save. They now seek after luxurious things. They now seek after people to do work for them. That means that certain office jobs will not be required to be done by someone because they themselves have reached a level whereby their country has the ability even to provide certain services which cannot be found in a developing country. That means we need to be cognizant of such development as it's a reflection of the future and we shall also notice that there is the aspect of what is known as the global trends. This I'm going to highlight in the light that I'm going to bring an overview of these things that are going to play a pivotal role. They are known as the mega trends. I'm talking about individual empowerment. I'm talking about diffusion of power. I'm talking about demographic patterns, food and water and energy nexus. What do I mean? I'm saying that individual empowerment is mainly the aspect of whereby we are looking at individual empowerment which will accelerate owing to poverty reduction, growth of the global middle class, and greater educational attainment. That means that the world where it is going right now, it is going to a stage whereby we are going to see and witness a change and a shift, because as more money is being directed towards education, Look at educational campaigns that are actually being spearheaded by the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon. Look at all these funds that are being spearheaded. Look at all the projects that are being done by the developed countries in helping developing countries to move out of the segment of not having that ability to attain education. That means that all these efforts, they shall start to yield results. As they start to yield results in the foreseeable future, that means we're going to have people attaining a greater level of education. Once you empower someone, you definitely have given him the wings, you have given them the emancipation to start looking for ideas. Because necessity is the mother of innovation. People start to be more innovative. People start to seek new pursuits. People go even outside their boundaries just to look for employment. That means that we're going to have that astronomical change in terms of issues that we look into. And also we then look also into the aspect of whereby we are saying there is the diffusion of power. The diffusion of power comes as a result that there will be that hegemonic power whereby we are saying no country will hold any country at ransom. As no country holds any country at ransom, it means that a lot of countries are now free to do as they will because no country is detecting to them the things that they ought to do. No partners are being detectors. Countries can freely trade. Countries can freely do things. What does that mean? It means that there is need for strategic thinkers. There is need for market analysts. We need to develop and sharpen the skills of the students that we offer services to. We also need to be cognizant that as these people, as these nations have that trading ability, there is need for communication. That's an opportunity for a company that does telecommunication that you need to then reinforce and find ways that will be innovative enough to provide that facility that will ensure that it will serve that market. We look at the demographic patterns. Demographic patterns are very crucial. Why? Because we see that in the foreseeable future, developed countries, because of their lack of investment in the issue of developing the birth of kids, promoting the birth of kids, it means they will have an aged class. And that aged class will not be able to give them the services and the working class that they require. That means Africa then arises as the opportunity or as the source market. We look at countries like Canada right now. They're in the business of importing workers. We look at Australia. They're in the business of importing. This is only but the beginning of the importation. Massive importations will be done. Why? Because they need to save. They need to have the ability to cater for their needs. And that means that they will look for people with the skills, people who know, because these countries are already in the fourth generations in terms of technology. That means whatever they're going to take has to be in the space or in the ability to service their needs according to the fourth generation or fifth generation that they might have by the year 2030. We also look at the issue which I find out whereby I say food, water, and energy. These are the crucial things that any human being might want upon this earth. So we need to look at aspects whereby we are saying there is need for someone to plan for the strategic reserves of food, ensuring that water is available, regardless of the pollution that is currently taking place. There is need for engineers to come up with ways of cleansing the water. There is need for new things, new methods of how people can reuse water, recycle it, making it consumable, making it usable, reusing it for other purposes. How best can you do that? There is need for people who have the ability, the energy, and the zeal to push and propel such ventures. We also look at the other aspects whereby we are looking at, this is an overview of the game changers that I summarized. So we look at also the other aspects when we talk of the game changers. We're talking about issues like the crisis-prone global economy. When we look at crisis-prone global economy, we are saying that there shall arise a time where we are projecting that by year 2030, there shall arise a time whereby it will be a crisis worldwide, whereby people might realize that there is something which is occurring. Why? Because there is the volatility and imbalance among players, different economic interests resulting in the collapse or greater multipolarity that lead to increased resilience in the global economic reorder. So that means that as the economies grow, there is also that element of these economies of scales because of the numbers. And remember, projections are saying that by the year 2030, the world might have reached 8.1 billion people. Currently, we are sitting at 7.3 billion people. That means that it will be almost by over a billion, almost a billion people would have been added onto this planet. That means that is a huge figure. And in terms of the current statistics, countries and governments are battling to cater for the needs of their own people currently. What more about another billion people being brought or imported or being birthed in this world? That means that's a huge plan that is to be set in motion in terms of preparing for their coming on board. And these things need to be catered for before anything happens. We look at the issue of the governance gap. The governance gap is an issue whereby we're saying governments of this world need to be able to plan and see how best to cater. But currently, with the current trend of things, there seems to be an issue which is likely to affect, because certain people and certain economies fail to understand and comprehend how best they can structure and bring to order the structures that are already there as the numbers grow in various cities and towns and economies around the world. We look at also at the potential for increased conflict. We're looking at a region which is highly unsettled, which is highly volatile. We're looking at things like the Middle East. We are looking about Africa itself, whereby we now have terrorists even on our own continent. The issues of Boko Haram, the issues of the various groups that are more like coming out because of these what are known as the resilient or the radical Muslims, which are more like taking over the world in terms of their approach. For they believe that in a way of trying to bring people to their belief, they have to use a forceful manner that will bring people to understanding. That means that a number of things are going to take shape. And as those things start to take shape, a number of things have to change. And people have to understand how best to counter those terrorist approaches. Then we look at the issue of the wide scope of regional instability. When we say wide scope regional instability, we're looking at, well, let's say for example, SADC as the current instance. We're looking at what happened recently in Lesotho, where the general was shot down, with the issue of whereby people are not willing to accept what had come out of elections. We have the issues that are currently taking place in countries like Burundi. Those things are issues that pinpoint to what the future is likely to hold for us if we are not careful, because the same people that might revolt and take over government might not necessarily be the people that will be there in power. Those that they would have taken over might be also planning again to come back into power. That means that it becomes a rotational event of instability, because everyone loves power. And power, people know it gives you access to the African resources. So we need to sharpen the skills of the students that at all we impart, or those that we might give the opportunity to go to school. They need to understand that there is need for integrity, there is need for leadership, there is need for principles, there is need for guidelines, there is need for governance in terms of how to do things. Then we are talking about the impact of new technology. We are saying the world as it is right now is moving, is dynamic, it's ever evolving. And one key thing that is revolving the world is technology. Ultimately, even though you might not want to accept it, but indefinitely you will have to accept it, that the world is changing, and it is changing at a faster pace than what we thought, or what we had budgeted, what we had thought for. The role of the United States. The United States is one key figure or one nation which you can't neglect, especially when you talk about projections, world projections. These guys, they determine, they are the major players in the playing field. But ultimately, one or the other, there are other players that are coming on board that are likely to downsize them in terms of how they determine the other economies. Then we look at issues like the tectonic shifts between now and 2013. We're going to have issues that I'm going to highlight briefly. There's the issue of the growth of the global middle class, wide access to lethal and destructive technology. There's going to be definite shift of economy and power to the east and south, unprecedented and widespread aging. I'm going to briefly touch on these. Growth of the global middle class, that I've already explained, that as countries now start to concentrate on empowering the poorer nation or the developing countries, that means more resources are being channeled, because currently there is a huge gap between developed countries and developing. That means there's a huge gap between the rich and the poor. So what is needed or what is required at the moment is that stage whereby we have that scenario that countries shift their attention and start to provide more resources to these countries. And as they do that, there's going to be this line of middle class that is developing. Once that line develops and stretches, that means that we are going to have a situation whereby there is that growth, exponential growth of the middle class. which is going to come about as a result of the educated young men and young women that will be coming on board. And there's need for us to cater and provide and make provisions for this type of class. When we talk of the widespread access to lethal and disruptive technology, we're talking of applications, we're talking of e-learning, we're talking of all these things, we are talking of certain aspects that we have never seen before. These things whereby we talk of the hackathons that are done all over the world. We are talking about these disruptive technologies. These things have a pivotal role because they shall determine things. They shall be the major players in terms of how things are going to be run in the world. Then we're talking about definite shift of economic powers to the east and to the south. Like we said, we talk of the BRIC nations, which I'm going to touch upon later on. They play a pivotal role in determining how the economy is. There's going to be the widespread of aging. This is going to be most notable in the developed countries because they have not invested or they are not investing in the issue of promoting birthing of kids. And that is not a good thing on the part of a government or on the part of an economy, because ultimately that age which is already there, they are going to age and they're going to pass on. And there is need for a new generation that is going to usher in new ideas and new approaches in terms of how to do things on that particular country. I'm going to move on to the next stage or to the next level, whereby we're talking about these other tectonic shifts that are like to take place. We're talking about urbanization. We're talking about food and water pressures. We're talking about the US energy and energy independence. These are critical things that we ought to look out for. As the world grows, as the economy grows, people are more radically and more swiftly moving to urbanizing every area that they go into. And that is something that people need to be cognizant for, as it is going to affect a number of things. Deforestation, other aspects that we might neglect are going to be affected by urbanization. Water and food, there's going to be increased pressure on its utilization and consumption. Thus, we need to be very cognizant of that. We're talking about the US energy independence. Recently, Obama was on the brink of saying that let's now resort to green energy. That in itself is a sign that they, on their own accord, they've seen that at the rate at which their economy is growing and also the things that consume and utilize power are increasing. There is need for alternative renewable energy, because the one that they were referring to mostly has now come to a point whereby it has reached its saturation level and they now need to see and think in other terms. I'm going to move on to the next thing. We're talking about the black swans that could cause the greatest disruptive impact. These are things that we need to be very cognizant of. There are likely to be severe pandemics around the world, much more rapid climatic change, the Euro or EU collapse, and a demographic or collapse in China. We're talking about the severe pandemic. Just talk of Ebola alone itself. It was something which wreaked havoc around the world. Let's talk about the rapid climatic change, which we are already witnessing and seeing the results of as we speak of things like the climatic change which is currently taking place. We are talking about the Euro or EU collapse. We are talking about the demographic or collapse in China, which is something which we need to take note of. Then we need also to look at issues like the reformed Iran, nuclear power, or the solar tech, and the BRIC countries are things that we need to be cognizant of, because these countries are countries that are likely to impact and change the landscape of the world in the foreseeable future, as they have shown signs that they have a definite impact on everything that happens around this world. Then this is a projection basing on the GDP, that is the per capita of these countries. We are talking of, in the very left side, you will notice that there is China. You can see that as it increases, China's GDP is increasing to a point by 2030, we are talking of an average of 70,000 GDP. That is per capita or per individual. 70,000 in terms of wealth. We're talking of the United States, which follows, which will be around 38,000. We are talking of India, a nation which people don't really look up to so much, will be also around the same range as America. We're talking of Brazil, which shall be around 12,000. We are talking of Mexico, which shall be around 9,000. We are talking of Russia, which shall be around 8,000. Indonesia shall be around 7. And Japan, 6. United Kingdom will be an average of 5,000. And then Germany will be also like just the United Kingdom. That's something which we need to take cognizance of and see and notice that it is something that is likely to affect. And these are also projections upon which we are seeing that the world economies are likely to see and witness as the world goes by. And these are things that we need to be cognizant in terms of the world population. We are seeing that Europe has now reached its saturation level around the 1990s and 2000, and it is now going down in terms of population increase. But we are looking at continents like Africa, we are looking at Latin America, we are looking at the Asia as the ocean continent. These are continents that we need to be cognizant of. We are talking of the Asian continent. They are proving to be world to reckon in terms of increasing the population numbers. So these are projections that will help us in terms of understanding things. So based on that, or having depicted on this, I now need to bring you to the attention of the point of this presentation, that as an organization or as an entity, we need to be cognizant about what we are likely to face in the foreseeable future. And one thing that is so obvious is that all these things pinpoint to a number of things. We need to be strategic in terms of our approaches. We need to channel our kids as a scholarship fund. We need to channel our kids in terms of funding them, in terms of their tuition, providing them with the necessary understanding of the skills that are likely to be required. Partnership. We need to know which countries or which point of organization we need to partner with in terms of future resources, because this also shall be seen in terms of the GDP that we have just witnessed according to the chart that I presented. We need to be cognizant of other things like disruptive technology. Which countries do we need to partner with? Which organizations are going to be the forerunners? Currently, we talk of things like Apple, we talk of things like Google, we talk of Facebook, we talk of WhatsApp, but there are likely to be new players into the field because these are technology. Technology is dynamic. It changes each and every time. There are a number of things that we need to cognizant, and these are just but an introduction to the various things that we shall touch upon in terms of how higher life can tap and utilize such type of information in terms of its planning. And not only for higher life, but also for Econet as a global company. We need to ensure that it invests in the right countries, in the right continents. And how best can it invest? How can someone invest in a country which is already in a 4G or 5G technology aspect? That means that you need to go into that market a step further than what that country already does. Well, I'd like to come to the point of conclusion, and I'd like to thank you so much for watching. God bless you. Till we meet next time.